All right, guys, it is Friday, the 24th of April. So it is the end of our second week, and that means we are going to do our last reading lesson. And what we are going to do is we are going to do like the writing portion of it, all right? So I am going to read to you the write about the text portion, and I'm going to flip the camera around and I'm going to let you watch it and I'm going to read it to you. Okay, guys? All right, so the student had to respond to the question. It said, add an event to the end of the story, use a hyperbole as well as details from the story. Okay? So this is what this student wrote. I'm going to pull out just a little bit here. They're adding an event to the story, so think about that. Pretty soon, the biggest, baddest, meanest tornado the settlers had ever seen came roaring into town. Everyone ran screaming for cover. Johnny stood still. Come on, Tadpole, he called. Let's show this twister who's boss. Then he lassoed that big tornado. Johnny held me with one hand and the twister with the other. The twister bucked and wiggled like a snake on hot coals until it finally gave up. Everyone was grateful that Johnny had saved our town from the tornado. All right, so they had to use a hyperbole. Okay, where did they use a hyperbole? Well, if you look at that very first beginning there, it said, pretty soon the biggest, baddest, meanest tornado the settlers had ever seen came roaring into town. Okay? That's an exaggeration. So that helps make it more interesting. It makes it a tall tale. Okay? It's definitely an exaggeration. It says to use some details from the text. Where do we see some details that definitely came from the text? Okay, let's think about that. Well, we know that Johnny was really what? Really big. Okay, so I'm thinking that area where it says Johnny held me with one hand and the twister with the other. We know that Johnny was really big, right? So that's a detail that we could take from the text because Johnny could definitely hold her and him with his hands if he was really large. Okay. All right. What else? What else? Well, we know that the detail that there were settlers, okay, and that they had been worried about what? A tornado coming to town, okay? They were worried about a tornado. So that detail is definitely something that came directly from the text. Because otherwise, where would we get that detail of a tornado? That could have been made up, but the ending of our text that we had just read talks about needing to use or wanting to have a tornado. And how would Johnny handle it? Okay? All right. Your guys' job is to do something very similar. You guys are going to write your own event to the story. You guys are going to add an event to the story. This is what your turn says. Add an event to the story. Describe how the family built a sod house when they got to Kansas. Use a hyperbole. Remember, that's an exaggeration. How does the family get the sod? Remember, Johnny's really big and strong. Maybe Johnny could be put to work getting that sod. Maybe that could be part of your exaggeration, your hyperbole. It says to use some details from the text. I'm going to ask you guys to use at least 6 sentences. Make some really long, make some short, and remember to use capital letters at the beginning of every sentence, and you need periods at the end, question marks, exclamation points. You need to use your punctuation skills. Write like 4th graders, almost 5th graders. We are almost 5th graders now. Isn't that amazing? Okay. You can write this on paper. Okay. You can show me it on Zoom that you've written it just by holding it up on your camera. You can type it up on OneNote. However you would like to do it, you can send it to me over Seesaw if you're connected to me by Seesaw. Whatever works for you. I'm just asking that you do it, okay? Now, some of you might not know what SOD is, so I wanted to talk about what SOD is, okay? You can look on page 333 for the example and for the your turn question, okay? So, sod. Have any of you ever had to have sod put down for grass in your yard? So sod for grass in our backyard is really only like maybe 1.5 inches to 2 inches thick. So think about the length of your middle finger, okay? But sod for a house, especially in the middle part of our country, the Midwest in Kansas, which is south of us, was a lot thicker. The roots of the grass were really strong and thick. So back when settlers came to the Midwest, when this story was written, they made houses out of sod, and it was thick roots and it was heavy. It was hard work digging it up and cutting it out and making it into a house, but that's how they made houses back then, because if you look around, do we have lots and lots of trees here? When you drive south or west or east, do you see lots of trees? Not unless you're in the Black Hills, right? So they didn't have an easy way to make a house. So they built them out of sod. They would cut chunks of grass and all those roots out, really thick ones though, guys. I'm not talking little thin. I'm talking big, thick chunks of grassy roots, okay? Not just like the actual grass growing out of the ground. It's the roots in the dirt, okay? And that's how they made their houses. It was thick patches of roots in the dirt that they cut out in big like chunks, squares, rectangles, and that's how they built their houses, okay? Big sheets of it, not teeny tiny little pieces, big sheets of it, okay? And if you look online, if your family gives you permission to actually Google sod, S-O-D, sod houses, you can look at them. They're pretty cool. That's how they made sod houses back in the day when they didn't have wood and brick and all that sort of stuff to make houses around here. Okay, so I'm going to read you the question again. Describe how the family built a sod house when they got to Kansas. Use hyperbole as well as details from the story. Guys, you can do it. 6 sentences minimum. Use your best almost 5th grader handwriting if you write it. Use your best punctuation, capitalization skills. Maybe read it to someone in your family. Okay, you're just adding an event to the story. Remember, this would probably go into like not right at the beginning, but somewhere near the beginning, because this is right when they got to Kansas, before all that stuff happened, kind of in the middle, after they had the oxen on his shoulders and they were traveling, okay? So after the traveling, that's where the event would go. Does that make sense? All right. I trust that you guys can do this, okay? We can share it if you would like to. Hop on to our Zoom session. I'm on at 10 if you're doing this early in the morning, okay? If you're not doing this early in the morning and this is later in the day, you're definitely welcome to share it on Monday during our Zoom session or Tuesday during our Zoom session. I would love to hear them read to me, okay? Or read to your classmates, okay? And if I don't see you guys today, if you don't hop onto a Zoom session, I hope you have a great weekend.